Hey, welcome back to the Left My Age Off podcast. This is a show, if this is your first time tuning in, where you're going to have practical ways to slow down the aging process. And if you've been listening to us for a while, we welcome you back. So, in today's episode, we are going to talk about the bones of anti aging. What do I mean by that? Well, literally, because what makes you look older is not necessarily what you think. All right. It's not just wrinkles, it's actually bone loss. I know. When I read these articles I came across the other day, I was actually just really shocked, to be honest with you, because you don't think of your bones. Us women, I know I've been guilty of this. I look at the texture of my skin. I do look at my skin for fine lines, if it's dry, but I never thought about what is actually underneath that. Well, it's my skeleton. Your skeleton is definitely what causes some of the changes that happen to our face, right? And this is without Ozempic, by the way. Well, maybe we got to do an episode about that. But that's what today's episode is about. We're going to give you some practical tips and some really good science to back this up. Okay. There's going to be actually 3 specific things that you can do. And, no matter what, whether you get your face lasered, plumped, Botox, there's nothing that's going to replace what we're going to talk about today. So I don't know about you. I refuse to age fast in this area. So let's dig into it together.
Embark on a journey to defy time with LMAO, Laughing My Age Off podcast. I'm your host, Erica Kelly, and I started this show because, like you, I'm curious about the secrets to staying youthful as the years go by. Join me as we discover the secrets to slowing down the aging process, exploring expert insights, cutting-edge research, and personal experiences that uncover the art of aging gracefully. It's time to laugh, learn, and embrace a life full of vitality together.
Okay, let's get right into it. What is going to help us age slower from a bone loss standpoint? All right, and especially what's going to make it look better for us as we age? We are going to get down to some facts here. I brought in some stats because I think it's nice to know where you stand in relationship to the average American. And again, if you're listening to this, you are probably way above average, okay? Just the fact that you're listening to this. But I like to put those stats out there because it just puts everything in perspective as to maybe how far you need to work on some things. And we are going to work on some things here today. So some stats, we're going to just do a reality check of where you may be. And then, of course, we're going to bring in the science, all right? There's a study that's been done that has shown significant improvements in bone loss. And then we're going to step into the 3 specific things. And I'm very excited about it because I passed that test. This is something that I do weekly. And you'll have to see for yourself if you do. And if you want to comment in a testimonial on this podcast, we would love it because that helps more people see the show. And, that's just how it helps us bring you more content. Okay. And so we're going to tell you what you can do and also what not to do, because you might be thinking I'm doing all the right things. Let's get into it. Okay. So let's start off by talking about the deadly truth about bone loss. We all know bone loss is dangerous. And when I was reading these stats, I just remember when I was younger, paying attention to older people, right? You see them in church, you see them everywhere. Older, we all going to get older, right? It's just part of life. But the ones that always stood out to me were the ones that had trouble walking, right? I always remember telling myself, oh my goodness, I don't ever want to get to that point. Mobility is so important, right? And you're probably thinking the same thing. Like, I don't ever want to be hunched over a walker, if we can prevent it. And so actually that's the mission. This should be the mission of the podcast. So around 10 million Americans have osteoporosis. 44 million have low bone mass. All right. So that is called osteopenia. And of course, women are much higher at risk of this post menopause, right? That has to do with hormones, right? And men do also lose bone loss, but at a much slower rate. So for women, if you're listening, the age, you might not be surprised by this. I was not. The age range of 45 to 55 is the onset of bone density decline, right? That's if you do nothing with your body. If you were just to continue on with life without listening to this podcast, all right? So there's actually x-rays. They call it the T, let me pull it up. I think it's called the T scan, and I actually want to go get one. And if I do, I will let you guys know. But right now, I just want to give you that information so you know. And I was like, well, how much is yeah, I'm sorry. It's a T score, but it's a DEXA scan, the DEXA, which stands for dual energy X-ray absorption absorptiometry. So that's why they call it the DEXA scan. And the score that you get is called the T score. They say that, from 0 to +1 is considered normal bone density. But as you go into, a -1 to -2.5, that is what we call osteopenia. Okay. And anything -2.5 or lower means you have osteoporosis. So those are some things to just be aware of. All right. Maybe you know somebody that has osteoporosis. Maybe they're taking supplements for it. But also, hip fractures, because you can measure your bone loss with these DEXA scans. All right. That's a way to just really check where you're at. But I also wanted to throw in here, hip fractures. And we mentioned this in another episode. All right. And this is really shocking every time I see this stat. Okay. So guess how many a year on average people are suffering from hip fractures? Over 300,000 per year on average. Okay. And guess how much percentage of that is women? 70%. Okay. So 70% is around 210,000 are women. So women, listen up. Hip fractures are no fun because you know what? They say that the 1 year mortality rate after having a hip fracture can be 21%. And even when you're trying to heal from something like this, many survive with a lot of long-term functional impairments, right? So it's going to be more difficult to walk. So you just don't want to get there is what the point is. You don't want to get to a point where you have fallen and you can't get up. Having this data, I also want you to think about, this is transitioning into the solutions here, okay? I also want to point out some of the average American reality checks for weight, height, okay? And I'll tell you why here in a second, because we talk about exercise in these stats. So think about yourself right now. The average American woman aged 40 to 59 weighs 178 pounds and stands about 5'3" and has a waist circumference of 39.4 inches. Okay, most fall into this overweight category. And when you have a larger waist circumference, that's usually an indicator for an increase of heart disease and diabetes. So maybe you're under 40. All right. If you're under 40 and are already falling into these stats, then we know where we need to work, right? And of course, you're over 40, this is definitely going to be something you want to focus on. Again, 178 pounds. Now, weight isn't everything, right? Muscles, getting to understand what your muscle mass is definitely important versus your fat. But the waist circumference is always a good one. Grab a tape measure, ladies. Are you over 39.4? Get it down. Get it down below that 39.4. Okay. Physical activity. Ready? Only 17.6% of women aged 50 to 64 meet exercise guidelines. Okay. So, what is the average guideline? This is recommended to have 150 minutes of moderate aerobic activity a week plus muscle strengthening twice a week. So 150 minutes, what does that come down to? That's about 2.5 hours. So that's about 30 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day. And I think that's definitely doable. Okay. Monday through Friday, or, sneak in a weekend. If the work week is too hectic, get it done. 5 days a week, 30 minutes. And that's what I do. 30 minutes. All right. And so then, men, I don't want to leave you out. If there's men listening to this, we don't want to exclude you here, but only 27% of men aged 18 to 64 meet those guidelines for the exercise. And the average man age 40 to 59 is about 200 pounds, 5'9" with a 40 and a half inch waist. All right. Okay, men. So if you are above 40 years old, 200 pounds, 5'9", make sure your waist size is less than 40 and a half inches for the waist. Okay. Go grab that tape measure. And again, the exercise guidelines are the same. So those of you who are listening, are you strength training? Twice a week minimum. Aerobic activity doesn't have to be crazy. You just got to get some activity in. Walking, hot Pilates, throw that in there. And because you're going to hit both of those in hot Pilates, by the way. That's just a nice perspective. Okay. And just seeing where you fall into those buckets. And now we're going to be moving into the study. This is called the Lift More Study and Bone Building Science Study. Okay. So there is good news out there as you're listening to this. All right. This is not all doom and gloom. I know sometimes I'm like reading these stats and I'm just like, all right, we got to make sure we're hitting all these checkpoints here. So this study took 101 women over 58, all with low bone density. Okay. So what they did is they split the groups up. Half of the women did high intensity resistance training twice a week, 5 sets of 5 reps. All right. That's totally doable. 5 sets of 5 reps, including, are you ready for this? 3 exercises. And we're going to talk about these 3 exercises here in a second. So these 3 exercises, they performed them at 80 to 85% of their 1 rep max. The other group, right? There was the 2 groups. The other group did low intensity exercises. They didn't say exactly which exercises they did for the low intensity, but low intensity, that could be swimming, that could be walking, that could just, maybe just stretching. So they did this for 8 months. The lifters, right? The stronger group, let's just call them. Guess what? The results for their bone density increased their spine bone density by 3%. Again, the lifters gained 3% of spine bone density. And the other group, this surprised me, they actually lost bone. They lost bone.
And now for a commercial break. Sitting for hours at my corporate job really wrecked my posture and left me with constant lower back pain. I didn't understand it. I was in my mid-30s. Was this a life sentence? I just felt so stuck. I didn't know what to do. Until I discovered mat-based Pilates. The movement, the core work, it really transformed my body and most importantly, relieved my lower back pain. And that's why I became a certified instructor, to help others break free from that same cycle. So if you're struggling with lower back pain, I get it, but it's not a life sentence. Join me for your first free mat-based Pilates class from your very own home on Zoom. This is a workout designed to restore your balance and strength. And again, your first class is free. They're live every Monday and Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The link is in the show notes. We'll see you there. And now back to our show.
So in addition to the lifters gaining 3% spine bone density, they also gain strength, balance, and of course, my favorite is confidence, right? When you get stronger in other things, in your body and just the way you carry yourself. And one of the most important highlights of this study is that there were no serious injuries, right? As long as you know what you're doing or you have somebody helping you, if this is your first time lifting weights, that is important to note about this study. Everything that I'm suggesting here is based on, number 1, you know how to do it correctly. 2, your doctor says it's okay. So anyway, back to how huge and impactful the study is. Why? Because, this is telling us that lifting weights, if you didn't know already, is telling your body, you know, hey, if you want those strong bones longer, build it up. It's what we call time under tension. So you can get that through just lifting weights, but you can also get that with resistance bands and specific exercises. Okay. So what happens is your muscle tugs on your tendons. And then what happens is a chain effect. Then your tendons tug on your bones. So the bones respond by reinforcing themselves. That is the science, my friends. Okay. So if you think about flexing, right? When you flex, actually, I believe bodybuilders do this because this is telling your body, hey, we need to keep this muscle strong because we're flexing it. It's attached to the tendon, right? And the tendon's attached to the bone. So we got to keep that going, right? And if you don't, we know what happens, right? We lose muscle mass, and then there's nothing to tell the bone to keep, to stay strong. When you put it in simple terms like that, it really just, it woke me up, right? It's just a simple thing. Most of the things that come down to any of these episodes that we're doing are very simple. It's just doing it consistently. Okay. So you guys ready for the exercises? Hold on. Let me get a sip. I got my cute cup today. It's a sewing machine. All right. It's a really nice one. I got it from this group that I'm in. It's just, I love it. It has my name on it. That's why I like it. There it is. Okay. Cheers to whatever you're drinking today. I've got some green tea. I've been chilling green tea lately, and I throw it in the fridge, and then I've been drinking throughout the day. That's a way to get some of those great antioxidants that we talked about in one of our episodes. All right. So I will link that one too, because the green tea is super, super good for you, everyone. Okay, on to our exercises. All right, so the best anti-aging exercises. So with this study, right, this isn't just me telling about my favorite exercises, although most of them are in here. Okay, that study we just talked about, they used 3 specific exercises to conduct this study. Okay, so the first one, okay, now I'm going to show you these exercises here too. So I will tell you what it is, and then I'm going to step back and show you. Okay. So those of you who just listen to the audio, you can hop on over to YouTube or just wait a quick second because I just want to show everyone here proper form. So the first exercise is squats, right? Squats. Who's surprised by that? I am not. All right. First of all, why are squats amazing? Well, they're really targeting the biggest muscle in our body, and that's the glutes. The squats boost testosterone, and they can trigger the human growth hormone. They can strengthen the legs and core. And of course, when you have a strong backside, a strong booty, you're able to preserve your posture. And there's no more pancake butt when you focus in on the glutes. So squats are a good way to get that area ignited. Okay, here I am. I'm going to do a squat. Okay, we just did a squat. And if you noticed, it's all about pushing your hips back. Okay. So with this exercise, as you get really good at squats, you can also add in a hand weight. All right. So the hand weight could just go right into your hands, right above the head. And that's just going to build a little bit more time under tension there. Okay. And there's many variations of squats. Okay. Traditional squats, just the full range of motion. You can just go up, you can go down. You can also pulse it out. I'm going to show you a pulse right here. Okay, so we added some squat pulses, and I actually added a hand weight overhead. So those of you who are watching on YouTube, that is a suggested exercise. Okay, so that's exercise number 1. So again, the recommendation they did for the study, 5 reps. All right, 5 sets. And that's not much at all, right? So if you've got like 10 minutes in the morning, do it. Maybe do it a couple times a day, because honestly, you will get stronger, and that's going to be like no big deal after a while. All right, exercise number 2. This is one of my favorites, but this is an exercise. I just want to warn everybody listening. If you have not done a deadlift, first of all, the name deadlift is scary. I remember the first time I heard that name, I'm like, what is that? Right? And I don't think I was doing it correctly years ago. In my high school, even in my college days, I'm just like, okay, deadlift. You can see a lot of videos online. Pay attention to the form. And I'm going to show you again here in a second what the correct form is. Okay. So let's talk about why deadlifts are amazing. And we do these a lot in our Zoom classes for good reasons. It works your entire posterior chain. So your entire backside. And it also strengthens your spine. And it really is one of those exercises that's great as you get older because it helps you learn how to pick up things off the floor. All right. I know you might be listening to this and maybe you're just turning 40. Maybe you're in your 30s listening to this. Whatever age you're at, there is a proper way to pick up things off the floor. And there are a lot of back injuries that occur from 30 onward. Okay. That's when I started to have lower back pain. It was like in my early 30s. And that was just, again, tight hip flexors, sitting too much, yada, yada, yada. So the deadlift, is a great way to teach yourself how to pick up things and heavy things, right? All right. And if you're working those squats, you're going to fire up some of those glute muscles. So that's going to strengthen the lower back muscles as well. So here we go. We're going to start the deadlift. I'm going to show you without any hand weights to start. Okay. And of course, this is, the study is based on strength training. I'm not quite sure. I will link the study into this podcast. How many pounds they used. It might have been a variation between all the people in the study, all the women in the study. But I'm going to show you can do this deadlift for form first. It's very important because the most common mistake that I've seen in my years of teaching is shoulders are forward and you're picking things up like this. Okay, that is a no-no. Okay, so here it is, great form right here. So that was the deadlift. All right, scary name, but has really great benefits. Okay, so let's move on to the third and final exercise to help increase your bone density. All right, remember 5 sets, 5 reps. Okay, so the final exercise are shoulder presses. Okay, shoulder presses, they strengthen your shoulders and your upper back, and they really stabilize your joints. But I do have to tell you, you got to be careful with these and know your limits. Again, having a coach, having someone really show you the correct form and which weight to use as you begin this, journey of weightlifting. I know a lot of people who use the same hand weights for like the bicep curls with a shoulder press, and you don't want to do that. Why? Because the shoulders, that ball and socket here has a little shallow socket there. Yeah, you see that? So it really relies on the smaller stabilizing muscles, like your rotator cuff. And it's the most mobile joint in your body, right? If you think about it, you can do these, I'm doing a hand movement here where I'm moving my arms forward and backward. All right. You can, when you're doing a shoulder press, you can even rotate your wrists up. So you're getting a little bit of more definition in that upper body. But what I'm trying to say is you don't want to go too heavy, too fast with the shoulder press exercise because it just requires a lot of, help from those stabilizer muscles around your shoulders. Okay. So let us show you how to do a shoulder press. I don't know why the thumbs up are coming up. Okay. That's why, right? Okay. So let's do it. I'm going to show you just with my fists, and then I'm going to take some hand weights to show you. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so those are the shoulder presses. As you can see, I was using my hands and then I added a hand weight. You can also double up on those hand weights if you want to. But when it comes to shoulder presses, It's not about how heavy you go, it's about how well you move. All right. So, research shows that using moderate to light weights for the shoulder presses with excellent form actually activates your deltoids just as effectively as, lifting the heavier hand weights, right? I know we're talking about resistance training, but you don't have to go as heavy on the shoulders, all right? That's the bottom line. So keep that in mind as add these exercises to your workouts. Let's talk about some of the workouts you may be doing that are not helping with bone density. All right. And this is not to say, these other workouts are not worth it, because every exercise is worth it. Okay. I think, there's plenty of things that are going to be beneficial for your life, whether it's, number one, we want to get the circulation. So you do want to do whatever works for you, right? Instead of being immobilized. All right, so let's talk about some of the workouts you may be doing that might not be supporting bone density, okay? And that's not to say other workouts are not good to do, but we just need to pay attention to making sure we add in some of those exercises like shoulder presses, deadlifts, and squats. All right, so walking, first of all, I love to walk, but it can't be the only thing. I see so many people walking in Florida, particularly, and it's good for the mind, it's good for the soul. That can be complementary to weightlifting. Okay. Walking is like lighting a candle. Once you blow it out, the effects are gone, right? Versus weight training, we all know the after effects will consistently help as you're sleeping. It also helps with metabolism. But of course, we're talking about bone density today. So that's going to help in the long run for longevity. Okay. So, what else doesn't help bone density? Swimming. All right. Swimming is another one of those that actually kind of surprised me. It's low impact, it's more for cardio, and it's really useless for bone density. So get those swims in for the cardio, for heart health, for burning calories. But if you want, supporting more things for your bones, you got to lift the weights, ladies. You got to lift the weights. All right. And you can also do other exercises. I know this is based on the study for the deadlifts, squats, and shoulder presses, but never underestimate, especially ladies, a push up. There's a lot of time under tension in a push up. Okay. Body weight, if you can lift your own body weight, that is a really great talent to have as you age. Okay. Some things to think about as you collect this information and you turn off this podcast, or maybe you share it with somebody that you think, oh my gosh, they have to do these exercises. Share it with a friend. Remember that if you're starting from zero, hire a coach or find somebody that knows how to work out. We all have a friend of a friend that knows someone that works out. Okay. Somebody that knows a little bit more than you, or of course, hiring a coach or finding a group setting of like an exercise group is definitely a way to start. Or you can just start in your home, right? Start in your home, call a friend, all right, and go over some of those exercises we talked today and be like, am I doing the deadlift right? All right. You can also videotape yourself, right? Video record yourself on your phone, send it to somebody. All right. If you need help, I am here. Message me. I'll drop my email in the notes here on the podcast. I can certainly help critique. I've critiqued a lot of deadlifts in my career because I've seen people hurt themselves. Okay. And you don't know what you don't know. All right. A deadlift is a really tricky one, but I made it look really easy. I know. All right. So focus on form and progress over ego. All right. Remember the light weights on the shoulder presses? Yes. Don't think you need to go hard so fast. Okay. Particularly in those exercises. That is it, my friends, for this short episode. I hope you found this very beneficial. Make sure you tune in and hang out to the end here. We're going to have a joke. We always have a joke after each episode that'll give you some laughs to burn and a few more calories for your day. There's so many other podcasts that you could be listening to. Take care and good night. All right, who's ready for a joke? We're going to go straight into it today. Here we go. Why did the pug sit in the shade? Why did the pug sit in the shade? Because he didn't want to be a hot dog. That's it for today. Talk to you soon. Bye.